Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. The Senate Intelligence Committee released its 600-page summary report this week on CIA interrogation techniques used in the wake of 9/11. Washington has been abuzz ever since. Did the CIA cross the line into torture, or were the so-called enhanced interrogation techniques justified in order to keep America safe? Here to discuss are former CIA General Counsel during the Bush administration and author of the book Company Man, John Rizzo, and former policy analyst at the CIA and now at the Cato Institute, Patrick Eddington. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here. Mr. Rizzo, I want to start with you. There is the suggestion in the report that these techniques went beyond the legal definition of torture, that they included torture. Do you see it that way? Did you see it that way? A lot of this crossed your desk.
Yeah, Raymond, we have to be a little careful here about our use of phrases because it can be confusing. First of all, as you know, there was an interrogation program that I was heavily involved in creating, providing the legal foundation. It generated.
You were the man they came to for legal.
Right, and I was the guy who went to the Department of Justice and got back what became euphemistically known as the torture memos.
Right.
So they approved, as not violating the torture statute, 11 techniques, including waterboarding.
There were some that were not approved.
There were some that were not approved. And I think what you're referring to in the report are those instances of abuses. And there were abuses during the 7-year duration of this program. I would contend occasional and isolated and aberrant, but there were abuses, yes.
So you would not consider waterboarding, sleep deprivation, power drills, insects, the cramped confinement, that didn't cross the line?
Well, you mentioned power drills. That was one of the abuses. One of the interrogators decided to get creative and use a power drill next to
a guy's head.
Yeah. Now, that, as it happened, just to be clear, the interrogator was yanked out of the facility and was retired in lieu of termination shortly thereafter. But the waterboarding and the others you mentioned, that is one of the 11 techniques which the Justice Department concluded did not cross the legal standard for torture.
Patrick Eddington, what's wrong with that?
Well, I think we know, based on international law and, in fact, U.S. statute, that these techniques, particularly the more radical ones that John has described, do, in fact, constitute torture. And I'd like to share with our viewers a little something from the Senate committee report. This is on page 33 for those who might be interested. After the July 2002 meetings, the CIA's redacted, CTC legal redacted, drafted a letter to Attorney General John Ashcroft asking the Department of Justice for, quote, a formal declination of prosecution in advance for any employees of the United States, as well as any other personnel acting on behalf of the United States, who may employ methods in the interrogation of Abu Zubaydah, this is one of the detainees from the first ones, that otherwise might subject these individuals to prosecution, end quote. And if you go through the Senate report summary, you find repeated references to concerns that folks are raising inside the agency about potential legal liability and whether or not this was actually violating the Geneva Conventions. I think the lesson for the country, beyond the horrors that we've read about, is that the Central Intelligence Agency should be in the intelligence business, not the detention business. And if anyone really bears responsibility for this at the end of the day, it isn't actually President Bush, because in the covert action memorandum of notification that he signed 6 days after the 9/11 attacks, he didn't authorize any of these things. This comes down to George Tenet ultimately making a decision to go forward with this.
John Rizzo, there is also the suggestion here that the CIA misled the president, misled congressional oversight. Is that the case now looking back?
No, I mean, we didn't do it looking forward and not looking back. I think what happened here is the Senate report, which, mind you, was drafted strictly by the Democrats on the committee. They never interviewed any of us who were involved in the program. I was not allowed to even see this report until the rest of the world did yesterday, so I'm catching up quickly here. In my opinion, the Senate Democrats, the staff, had a preconceived notion that the underlying criticism, really, when you get right down to it, is that in their view, the program didn't work. It was ineffective. It didn't do any good.
Right.
Therefore, they went back in each of these cases, and in all of those instances, we in the agency, and I would include myself in that, they dump on me for intentionally misleading the Department of Justice, because we went over, and among other things, we told these people the value the program had been given the kind of intelligence that had been derived from it. So since they did not agree with that, the Senate Democrats, ergo, everything we said was intentionally misleading to everybody. Particularly preposterous is the notion that we deceived the White House. I mean, I can't tell you how many National Security Council meetings I went to, chaired by the Vice President.
So are you saying President Bush did have knowledge of these, these practices?
He did. Now, in fairness, I never personally briefed President Bush. I personally briefed Vice President Cheney, National Security Advisor Rice, Chief of Staff Andy Card, White House Counsel Alberto Gonzales.
So the White House was not in the dark?
No, and I assume one or more of them briefed the President. I just can't say from direct knowledge, being in the room, that he was
I want to play both of you something. This is John Brennan, the current CIA director. He said there was intelligence gleaned from these, albeit they harsh, and they might be torture. Listen.
What I said was that detainees who were subjected to EITs at some point during their confinement subsequently provided information that our experts found to be useful and valuable in our counterterrorism efforts. And the cause and effect relationship between the application of those EITs and the ultimate provision of the information is unknown and unknowable.
Patrick, the CIA director here and previous CIA directors said there was information gleaned from this, and in the context of the moment, in that the desire to stop another terrorist attack, these were desperate measures, but these were desperate times. You'd say what?
Yeah, well, we've been through this before, haven't we? I mean, our country has been through multiple world wars over the course of the last century, and of course, this particular threat. And it wasn't until this particular event, 9/11, and what John and others helped to construct afterwards, that we actually walked down the dark side, to use Jane Mayer's phrase. There's no question that there was absolutely no intelligence gleaned from this that helped prevent an attack on the United States. I'm not here to defend necessarily the work that Senator Feinstein and her staff did. Personally, I think it's outstanding work. I would very much take issue with what John said previously about this being some kind of partisan hit job. I think you look only to what John McCain had to say about this to know that there is a bipartisan understanding now, at least I think among a plurality of members and hopefully a majority, that we're not doing this again.
Let's talk for a moment about the timing of this and releasing it at all. 7 years after this program is dead and gone. I mean, President Obama banned the use of these techniques. That was 7 years ago. Is there a danger to releasing them now? What is the reaction of allies? And is this a productive discussion to have out in the open? John Rizzo.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I've actually been on record in the media several months ago, because this report's been hanging fire seemingly forever, that I thought the report should come out. I mean, notwithstanding the fact that it was clear. I mean, there were such sort of leaks. It was clear it was going to be harshly critical of the agency and probably of me.
And you, yeah.
Because I thought, you know, taking 5 years, $40 million, whatever it was. The American people paid for it. They should see it. That said, I must say, so that's where I was. But last Friday, I was startled to read that Secretary Kerry, a liberal Democrat from Massachusetts, Secretary of State Kerry, apparently felt obliged or compelled to call the Chairman Feinstein to, again, I'm going on news reports and I have no inside knowledge, apparently warn her of the dangers and the risk that would be posed by releasing the report at this particular moment in time. I don't recall it ever happening before, and the fact it was done by all people, John Kerry, I just found striking.
I want to play John McCain. I want you both to react. This is John McCain from the floor. Listen.
It's a thorough and thoughtful study of practices that I believe not only failed their purpose to secure actionable intelligence to prevent further attacks on the U.S. and our allies, but actually damaged our security interests as well as our reputation as a force for good in the world.
There's no question. I think that it's going to take our country decades if ever, essentially kind of climb out of this pit that we've been in. But this at least is a first step. You know, Raymond, mass surveillance and torture are the hallmarks of totalitarian regimes. The United States has employed both of those tactics over the last 13 years. We need to renounce both, and we need to renounce them forever.
But the surveillance continues, as do these drone attacks, which I find it perplexing to see politicians fulminating and losing their lunch over this. Yet there are ongoing policies that this administration and that these Congress people have endorsed. Drone strikes of citizens and foreigners.
And Americans?
Well, abroad. These things have happened abroad. Question to you before I let you go, John Rizzo. Any regrets at all looking back on this?
Oh, sure. I mean, I made mistakes. As I say, the program was not perfect. It had to be put together quickly, and it wasn't at times not well managed. And I didn't at all times manage the legal process well. For instance, I should have pushed back early to the White House. They insist on keeping the knowledge in the Congress to 8 people, the leadership. That was a huge mistake. Mm-hmm. We should have briefed the entire intelligence committees from the beginning. Mm-hmm. I regret that. It was a White House call, but we should have, and I should have, fought back harder on that, because at the end, you saw what happened. The 8 weren't there. So, mm-hmm. So sure, I have some regrets. But overall, on the fundamental questions, no.
No, not about the black sites or any of that.
Nope.
No. Patrick, last word.
The CIA should not be in the detention business. It should be the intelligence gathering business. That's how it best serves America.
Okay, we will leave it there. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here and for the thoughtful conversation.